All right, here we are with topic 2. We're going to look at life in the Wild West. Sometimes when we look at the West, yeehaw! Oh, what is that? A lot of times when we look at the Wild West, we kind of get that image in our brain of, the cowboys and the outlaws and the bandits and the shootouts and gunfight at the Yokai Corral. We're going to start looking at, how much of that was true, what was really going on. First thing we need to look at is mining in the West. That's kind of where, that's kind of where the West kind of gets its beginnings, right? We're looking at the discovery of gold and silver and other valuable resources that is just going to start to lure. It just starts calling to people all over the world, come out west, get rich quick. And honestly, most of the money's made by the large corporations, right? Oh, I forgot my pen. This is one of the important things you got to get out of this is the difference between boom towns and ghost towns. If you think of it like a giant balloon, all right, that's a balloon, whether you think it is or not. Right? When gold is discovered, you're going to have tons and tons of people flocking to that site wherever the gold and silver has been found. Right? It's not just miners. It's people that own hotels, people that own restaurants, people that own the supply stores that have to sell the supplies to the miners and the restaurants and the hotels. Right? So you kind of just blows up real quick like a balloon. Just imagine a balloon filling up with air real quick. As soon as the gold or silver is gone, everybody leaves. They go find the next place where gold or silver is found. So the city, the town, the balloon just shrinks right back down again, and there's nobody left, right? That's a ghost town. So boom town, it blows up real quick. Ghost town, it disappears real quick because people moved on to other places, right? 1849 begins the actual California gold rush. Okay, in case you didn't see that. That was a football going through. That's where the San Francisco 49ers get their name from. The Gold Rush. That's why their color is gold. Their uniforms are gold and maroon. Right? 1849. Right? This is a pretty interesting chart because it kind of ties a bunch of things together. First, the one that jumps out at me and should jump out at you is the diversity, meaning the different cultures that would make up people that go out west looking for gold or silver. You have different nationalities from all over the world. You have the travel routes here. You have their plans, whether or not they wanted to stay there or not. Right? Gold is definitely going to increase the population of the West. Right? This is just a nice little nice little visual that kind of shows you the difference between boom towns and ghost towns. All right, some boom towns like Denver, Colorado, that actually sustains itself after the gold or silver production has fallen. Right, people find other ways of making money. So if you need to pause it and look at that, definitely do that. All right, so here's your first key question: how did the gold rush impact westward growth? Hint. People wanted gold. Right, what's the difference between boom and ghost towns? You just had that and that visual in the previous slide. So hit pause, go back and answer. All right. The next thing we're going to look at is the cattle industry. We touched on it briefly in the first video, just how the railroads impacted that, and it's really going to come down to the fact that railroads do spur it along. Right. If you're thinking about, here's the United States, kind of looks like the United States. Here are all the major cities in the east. You can't herd cattle there. Cattle get herded here in the Great Plains. So the railroad allows us to, that's a railroad, railroads allow us to transport them as quickly as we can. All right. So now I'm sorry that my map is in the way. Let me see if I got my eraser. There's my eraser. Whoop. All right. So this map here, this map is actually pretty interesting. All right. It shows you the different cattle trails, which are the different colors, and the railroads going across the top. So the black lines are the railroads. The different color ones are the cattle trails. Right? Obviously, you want to find the easiest pathway, the easiest way to get there. So the whole idea is to herd the cattle to the north, right, so they can get on the railroads, and then the railroads take them to the east. Because if we try to herd cattle from Texas all the way to New York, right, that's going to take an awful long time. Right? What brought an end to the cattle kingdom? Oops, sorry. The whole idea is that cattle need open areas to graze, and that's what comes referred to as the cattle kingdom, the open range. And you start getting farmers that come out, all right, and they, think about it if you were a farmer, right? You have all your crops. So I'm a farmer. Those are my crops. Right? When the cattle come through, they're either going to eat your crops, or they're going to trample your crops. So you're going to start building fences to keep in your ground. So if this area, if this is like if we're looking at an overhead view of an open piece of land, right, the cattle are used to just grazing right on through here on their cattle drives, but you start getting farmers that come in and start building fences, barbed wire fences around their farms. What happened to the amount of land that cattle were able to roam on? It gets reduced drastically, right? So that's definitely going to impact the cattle industry. You start getting different cattle companies out there. Big conglomerate cattle companies start pushing the little ones out of business. The climate starts to alter a little bit, which means you lose some of the good soil, which then disrupts the grass. The cattle kingdom, the cattle industry does start to slowly decline. All right, this map is kind of just putting it in a little bit more perspective for you. We're going to focus here on the beef cattle. Okay, so you can kind of see, we do have some out here in California, but for the most part, right, here's where all the cattling is done, and then your railroads are going to connect the open range with all of the big cities here, where all the population is. Right, so we start thinking about like the cattle towns, the boom towns. This is where the whole idea of the Wild West comes from. And in reality, most of the cities on the West were nothing like they are in the movies. Okay, you actually, really kind of the romanticized, the romantic version of the West is a whole lot different than it actually was. You did have the cowboys, you did have the Native Americans, you did have some bandits, but it was nothing like it gets made out to be in the movies. All right, key question 2. What was the cattle kingdom and what led to its end? All right, and then the last thing we're going to look at is settling in the West. All right, and it all starts and stops with the Homestead Act. Right, and that was a government law that provided land to settlers, because remember, the government wants settlers to go out west. Definitely beneficial for the nation as a whole. So the government tries to push people further and further out west, enticing them. The Homestead Act gave you 160 acres. That's a lot of land. All right, think about it. That's like a football field. 1 acre is about a football field. So 160 acres for free if you agree to farm it for a period of 5 years. So a lot of people start taking the government up on their offer. You have thousands, tens of thousands of people going out west. Lots of different groups. Women, immigrants, African Americans. Think about it. African Americans aren't going to want to stay in the South because of the Jim Crow laws, because their rights are being violated, right? So they actually, a group of African Americans becomes referred to as the Exodusters, right, named after the book of Exodus in the Bible. All right. This is a sod house, all right, and that's a house made of grass. Chunks of topsoil. Sod would be the really thick, juicy. If you think about it, if you pulled up a piece of grass, I'm sorry it's in red because grass is obviously green. But if you pulled up a big chunk of grass, you have that layer of dirt attached to the bottom of the roots, right? That's sod. And if you look around here, I see maybe one right here, but there's not a lot of trees out on the plain, so you're not really going to have an awful lot of homes made of wood. Right, you can ship it out on railroad to get to you, but that's going to cost a lot of money. So poor farmers had to rely on their environment. They turned to sod. Right, here's another picture of a sod house. You can see using the environment, using whatever's there in order to build your shelter. Right, this is very similar to the map we had in topic 1. It shows you the areas that are settled. First is the green, the next is the orange, and then the pink is the reddish here is the last part. You can start to see the white. That's going to be areas that are not settled, or definitely aren't settled in too much depth by 1890. Right? And it's important to know that there's a group of people living out here. They lived there for thousands of years that are going to not take too kindly to all the settlers coming out west. Right? And then the last thing we're going to look at is farmers start to be taken advantage of. They start to fall victim to big business, which is going to be the next unit we look at. So, they start raising railroad rates, which hurt farmers, cost them more money. So they form their own political party, known as the Populist Party. And there's an easy way of remembering that, right? Populist sounds an awful lot like people. So it could also be referred to as the People's Party. And then I gave you some of the platforms, some of the things that they were looking to have done by the government here. Mildly successful. One of their big candidates was William Jennings Bryan, but they really don't get any candidates elected to any significant office. Right. This is just an interesting map showing you the difference in 40 years between 1850 and 1890. The yellow is the settled areas. Right. So in 1850, before the Civil War, you really only had 2 pockets of settlements here in the West. You had some little ones, but for the most part, just those 2 big ones. And then look what happens. We start getting more immigrants from Asia, specifically China. Right. They start settling. You start getting the gold boom. People start coming out from the west. The cattle industry starts to boom. So people just, going out west looking for a better life. All right. And this is just a visual summary. Oops, sorry. This is kind of tying together a lot of the major things that we looked at in this topic. I put an X on the Native American one because our whole third video or third topic is solely on Native Americans. So just kind of focus here on these things. Definitely pause it if you need to, because there's a lot of good information there. Last question: how did the government encourage farmers to settle in the West? What kinds of challenges did they face? One additional thing that we didn't talk about with farmers, which may help you, is definitely being out in the middle of nowhere, right? No schools, no hospitals. You had to do everything on your own. That would be considered a challenge as well, but focus more on the conditions that they lived in. Okay? See you guys soon.